Hey, welcome. In this session, I will share with you 3 ways for you to prepare for your tech sales interview. If you're doing a tech sales interview currently or you're in the process, usually there is a role play going on. And for a lot of people, that role play is a cold call, a mock cold call, or a discovery. And usually, depending on where you are, this might be, 2 to 3 steps into the process, or it could be one of the final rounds. I've had a lot of people that, are going through this interview process and they come to me for help. And I've actually interviewed in the last year, I've had at least 2 a week. So it's been crazy the number of interviews that I've had to go through this. So I'm going to share 3 tips that can help you to perform better in your take-home exercise, especially if it's a role play. And said this is specifically for tech sales. So if you're applying for BDR or an SDR position, sometimes even an AE, but I'm specifically talking to early stage business development there. All right, so this might sound simple, but the first one is really just you have to read the prompt. So I think this is a big one that a lot of people miss, is that usually companies will send over a prompt and they will say, hey, here's a paper, read through this, and here's what we will be covering. I think a lot of people miss that. They skim it and they say, okay, I think we're going to do a take home, we're going to do this review session, but they never truly read through it to see specifically what is being asked, how it will be conducted, and how they can make the best use of their time in that session. There's a lot of times as well, and I've done it, there is a opportunity at the bottom to ask follow-up questions. So hear me out. For the first thing you should do is read through the instructions as best as possible and making sure you understand what is being asked. Because I think a lot of people miss this just simple fact of like, after you've read through the instruction, do you understand specifically, is it going to be a cold call exercise or a discovery? That's going to change how you approach, how you prepare. So I think those are 2 big things that like, I can't tell you the amount of people that show up that didn't necessarily read the instructions and just came prepared thinking like, oh my God, like I'm going to crush it. So I will say like that is the first thing I often tell folks. Read through it as much as possible, read it multiple times, go back over, making sure you understand what is being asked, and even ask other friends to read through it so they can help you to understand it too. I think that's one of the most fundamental ones. All right. Number 2, which sounds even as simple as this one, is you have to truly do your research. And a lot of people show up not knowing specifically what the company does. They haven't really watched, videos or read articles. There's 2 ways, right? There is, number 1, there is a resource section on every what we call website. There's usually a resource section. I'll give an example shortly here, but there's always a resource section. And in that resource section, you should definitely be able to see what have they said about themselves, webinars, white papers, how have they described themselves. And this is really helpful for you because if you've gone through these resources section, you'll get an understanding of, number 1, how is it they describe themselves, but also what customers they serve, right? And we'll talk about that in other videos of how is it that you can ensure that you can you come across as knowledgeable. So that's the first piece of doing the research. So that first piece is understanding how they describe themselves on the resources section of their website. The other thing is what I like to call like just doing research on your own. So now we have Claude, ChatGPT, all the above. How have other people described them? So have there been articles out there in the wild, podcasts, YouTube clips? Have there been articles that other people have used to describe them? It's just a quick Google search, and this goes a very long way. So definitely something I think that people should look into. So let's recap. Number 1, you really want to read the prompt as much as possible to understand what what's expected of you. Number 2, you want to make sure that you're in a place that you have done your research. And then the third piece that I'll share with you, I said, this sounds very simple, but you have to practice. I just did a practice session this morning with someone, and I was saying, hey, you need more reps. Like, you want to be in a place where you're almost over prepared. Like, you want to come across as like no one expects you to be a expert in the company, but you can't be hopping on the calls coming off as not as confident, that you don't know stuff. Confidence goes a long way. And one of the reasons that a lot of people end up being confident is that they've practiced, they've put in the reps, they understand if it's a cold call, you've never done a cold call before. You can hop on, call up a friend, or you can do it by yourself and just like reading it out loud. Reading out loud is a great form of practice. You can even like spin up a chat GPT and talk to and say, hey, I'm interviewing for an SDR position. I should probably do this. I'm interviewing for an SDR position, and I'd love for you to be a cold calling bot for me to practice. That way you can go back and forth with it and learn how you can practice with ChatGPT there. I think that's a really good thing that you can do. But I think it's understanding what questions you're going to ask, different scenarios. Practice with your friends, practice talking. If it is a cold call, you have to practice. With discovery call, you still have to practice. I think the disservice is thinking that you can read something and just show up and perform well. I've had the opportunity of like talking to people when they've practiced and it shows, versus people who didn't practice and you're like, wait, am I your first interview that you've done this to? Especially if it's like if this is your first time there. And ideally, you're not doing many of these, so you become great at it, right? Like if you've gotten to 10 of these interviews and you're not getting a job, there's a whole different thing there. But if you're getting 1 to 2 take-home exercise where it's a role play, the best way to get ahead is like use your resources. So are there friends and family you can say, hey, can you help me to practice? You can use ChatGPT voice, and I'll probably make another video on this and like how to make sure like you can practice there. But the biggest thing is like, have you said it out loud multiple times? Have you watched videos of how cold calls or discovery calls are done? And then you really have to practice. So just to recap, 3 biggest takeaways or 3 biggest things that you can do today to ace your take-home exercise, if you're applying for an SDR, sales development rep, or a business development rep, and there is a step in the process that takes into consideration role play, this is something that you should do. Like number 1, making sure you read the prompt. Number 2, making sure that you're doing your research on the company and the people that you're reaching out to. And number 3, you have to practice. Stay tuned for more sessions like this. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Comment down below if you have any other questions about breaking into tech sales. I will be sharing a lot more of these over the upcoming weeks. Looking forward to the next chat. Talk soon.